Hello and welcome back. I want to first apologize for the shoddy audio from last video. That should be more or less fixed. Um, I messed up on some audio details with push to talk, but hopefully now there won't be any cutouts or anything. All right, so let's start out by making another new project, another game maker language project. Let's name it something like Tutorial 3. All right. So let's try dragging something. Let's make something that's draggable. So the first thing I want to do. Let's make it look like it's like a window, like from like a Windows window. And then let's create a spray. Remember to use your prefixes. It doesn't have to be fancy. That kind of looks like a window. I like that. All right, now let's make a create event for this. And before we get into dragging this window, how to do that, I want to talk a little more about if statements and conditionals. So, you remember from last lesson that a conditional is something like a statement that you give to something that can either be evaluated to true or false. So, for instance, we had a Boolean value. Remember, we had Booleans that we can make true or false. But there's also operators that you can put in to determine things that you want to check. For instance, this guy right here, the little right arrow, is called the greater than operator. What it does is it checks to see if whatever's on the left is greater than whatever's on the right. And if it is, this whole thing returns true. So 5 is greater than 4, so when the game runs, it will take this and it will evaluate it and return. Right? So let's do something like this. Let's make some variables. Let's do this. Let's check to see if health is greater than damage, or if health is less than damage. Yeah, let's check to see if health is less than damage. All right, so we're checking if health less than, because the left arrow is less than. You can think about like this: that wherever like the mouth is open, that's the greater than side. Whenever the little mouth of the arrow is closed, that's the less than side. So here we're checking if health is less than damage. And we can see, is health less than damage? Yes, it's 5. So if health is less than damage, let's say, oh, you died. You took too much health damage. Remember that else that we talked about? That after an if statement, as the very last, default thing you can do after if statements is else. And else will be the default, like what happens if all else fails. You don't need to put an else, but let's do that. All right, here we're putting health equal to 5 and damage equal to 6. We're saying if health is less than damage, you're dead. Show the message you're dead. Else, if it's anything else, if health is anything else but less than damage, we're going to say, you made it. You're alive. So let's check to see if this is successful. Well, you make a guess of what's going to happen, and we'll run it. Well, what's going to happen is we're going to get... Oh, remember what we said about redeclaring built-in variables? I did it again. I tried to redeclare health. So let's call this HP. Health points. That looks good. All right, let's do it again. All right, nothing showed. Wait, why did nothing show? If HP is less than damage. Oh, I'm an idiot. We forgot to put our object in the room. That's why nothing showed. Let's do that there. Oh, and let's change our room properties again. Let's make it something bigger this time. Let's make it, 400. Let's make it like 600 by 450. And then let's double those values in the creation window. So here are 2 useful keywords. Room width, room underscore width, and room underscore height will get you the room width and room height of the current room you are in. So for us, it will get us 600 and 450. And so for window size, because we want to keep things in the same scale, in the same aspect ratio, what we can do is this. So we want to scale everything up by 2, right? That way we have a small room, but the window, remember, like, the window's different. The window size is different from the room size. But the window size is larger. Oh, why did I do that? But the window size will be larger than the room size, so we can actually see what's going on. Because if it's too small, it becomes hard to work in, you know, like play a game in such a small window. But we're going to just scale everything up by 2, and hopefully it looks good. You're dead. It worked. All right, we're dead, and we see our window. All right, so what happens if so HP was less than damage, so we're dead. It said you're dead. All right, so what if we made HP greater than damage? Let's see what happens now. Take a guess what will happen. You made it. You're alive. Very cool. Let's change the room color. Let's go back to... Let's do something like that. All right, very cool. Now you're gonna notice that I have the origin of my window center, and what an origin is, it's where it's drawn from. So if I have an origin at the center like this, the image will be drawn at the center. I think by default GameMaker has the origin set to the top left, but what I want everyone to do, just because it saves a lot of time, because commonly you want things to have an origin of center. So what you should do is, or what you can do if you want, is go to Preferences, and then for default sprite origin, put middle center, if you'd like. That's totally up to you. All right. So that's cool. What if we wanted to check if two things were equal? Use two equal signs. If you want to check to see if HP is the same number as damage or the same value, then we can use equals equals. Don't use a single equal sign. Use equals equals. So let's check. And let's say this doesn't really mean much, but the text is fine. We'll leave the text for now. It says you made it. You're alive. But what if we made the damage 6? So what will happen now? You're dead. All right. But what if I want to test like multiple of these things? Or what if I want to test if one thing's true and one thing's not? Or what if I wanted to test that, like, I only want to do this thing if both these things are true? Let's say I had a variable called dead. That keeps track if the player is dead or not. If they're dead, we'll set it to true. If they're not dead, we'll set it to false. And we had a variable called um, gravestone. Like, okay, they're dead, and this variable keeps track if they have a gravestone or not. So what if we wanted to see if both dead and gravestone were true? We want to check, okay, is both dead and gravestone true? What you could do is use an operator called the AND operator. What this does is it checks to see if the thing on the left and the thing on the right are true. There's also another thing called the OR operator. It tests to see if the thing on the left is true or the thing on the right is true. And there's also the not equals operator. It will test to see if the thing on the left is not equals to the thing on the right. So if they're not equivalent, then this whole thing will become true. If they are equivalent, if they are the same thing, this will become false, right? You can also just put a exclamation point. If I put an exclamation point right there, I'm testing to see if gravestone is not true. So if it's false, this thing will be true. But if it's true, this will be false, because we want to check if it's not true. The exclamation point means not true. So right now, what will happen? We set gravestone to false if exclamation point gravestone. So what will happen? You're dead. Because it's false, it's not true. We're testing if it's not true, so that's perfectly good. So what if we made it true? You made it. You're alive. So those are both things that you want to good. All of these things are good things to remember when using GameMaker. Some things that to note about and or is that they have other there is other characters to use. You can use with them, and sometimes people use. So in C++, this is and this is also and in GameMaker. Both this and this are virtually the same. They both test to see if something on the left is true and something on the right is true. This is equivalent to this. They both ask if something on the left is true or something on the right is true, and then the whole thing will be true, right? So if I run this right now with OR, what do you think will happen? Take a guess. You're dead. It's because one of those things were true, so the whole if statement's true. All right. So that's it for now on if statements. Now we're going to do some dragging. I'm going to clean up that sprite really quick. There's a pixel that's bugging me. Okay. All right, next up, let's do some dragging. Let's make some variables. We'll use this variable to keep track of if the window has been clicked or not. And we'll use this value to see if, actually, delete the clicked. We'll use this value to see if we're being dragged or not. Dragging equals false. So we're just saying, hey, we're going to use a variable. It's going to be a global. Remember, if you don't use a prefix, it's going to be a global to the scope of the object. So all the other events in the object should know about this. And we're going to set it to false. So let's go to step. We're going to say an if statement. So it's going to take a conditional. And we'll leave it blank for now. I'm sorry, guys. I hate that this happened. So let's create a variable. So what are we going to make? What are we going to put into clicked? Var clicked. It's a var. We only want to make it for this, this event. So what are we going to put in here? So this is a function. Remember that functions do something when you put something into them. So we need to put some values into them and see what happens. So mouse check button. What are we going to put into mouse check button? Well, it has one argument, and that argument is button. So what is button? Well, there's some keywords you can use. MB left is one of them. MB left stands for mouse button left. There's also mouse button right, MB right, and mouse button middle, MB middle. So what this does is it checks if a button was interacted with at all during this frame. So during this step, has a button been pressed? And we want to go further. So mouse button check button will check every frame if a mouse button is still being pressed, right? Mouse check button pressed only checks the first time. Well, when it only runs once when the button is pressed down. Mouse check button will run every frame as the button is being held down. Mouse check button pressed will check once as the button is being pressed down. That's the difference. One will check every time, one will only check once. So, okay, we're gonna check if the left mouse button was clicked, and it's gonna either become true or false, and we're gonna store that true or false into clicked. So if clicked equals true, we know that mouse check button pressed was true. If clicked is false, we know that mouse check button pressed was false. So we're checking if the mouse button was clicked, but we also need to know if our mouse is hovering over the window, right? Because it's not, if we just check this, the mouse could have been anywhere when it clicked. We want to know that when we're dragging, that we have both hovered our mouse over the window and that we also clicked on it. So we're going to make another variable for that. So let's go and take a look at some documentation. So what this does that we can see, with this function you can check a position for a collision with another instance or all instances of an object. When you are checking a single point in the room for an instance or an object. This check will be done against the bounding box of the instance or against the mask of this instance if that instance has precise collision checked. If you need to get the unique instance ID of the object being collided with, you should use instance position. This function also accepts the special keywords all and other. So what this does is you put an x and y of a coordinate somewhere in the room, and you check if that x and y, that coordinate, intersects at some point with the object, with an object that you specify. So we're trying to see if the mouse coordinate, the mouse x and y, is intersecting with the window, right? So this is a good function for us. Here's some more useful keywords. So this function, it takes the first two arguments it takes is an x and y coordinate. All right. So we want our x and y coordinate to be the coordinate of the mouse, right? So there's two keywords, special built-in keywords from GameMaker. Mouse x and mouse y, they both keep track of the x and y coordinate of the mouse. And so the third argument we're going to make self is another keyword. It represents the ID of the instance that's calling it. So in this case, it's the window. So the window, it's referencing the ID of the window. So here we're checking, does our mouse x and y coordinate intersect with us, with our window, which we're calling it from, the step of the window. And if that's true, this will return true, so hovering will become true. And if it's false, hovering will be false. It will check this every step. So here we can check if clicked and hovering. We're going to do, if these are both true, we're going to do what's in this if statement. Okay, so now we know, so we clicked, we were hovering and we clicked. So once it's clicked down, we want to start dragging it. But if we do this, watch. Oh, one more thing. So dragging is really just an object following the x and y coordinate of the mouse. So what we could do here is use some trickery with the keywords we know. In this way, if clicked, sorry, not clicked. If dragging, then we want to follow the coordinates of the mouse. So it creates the illusion of dragging something. But if we just leave it like this, something we don't want to happen will happen. And you can see now. So you notice that even though I let go of my mouse button, it's still dragging. I can't ever let go of it. Once I've clicked it, it's always going to be clicked. So let's fix that. Let's add a new variable. So mouse check button released, it will check if the left mouse button, because we put the argument in be left, so we're saying we want to check the left mouse button, is released. And if it is released, this will become true, and it will be stored and released. If it's not released, this will become false, and it will be stored and released. This way, when we let go of the mouse button, we'll also let go of the window. Let's try that. Look how nice that is. We have a window we can drag around. But it always drags from the center. Why is that? So the reason why that is because the x and y coordinate is based on the origin. And I always set my origin to the middle. So when we say x and y equals mouse x, mouse y, we're saying we want the center of the object to be at the same place as the mouse x and mouse y. There's an easy fix for this. We can change the origin just for this sprite to the top center, so it looks like we're really dragging it around like a window. Put a little lower like that. Now let's try it. Check it out. We're dragging it around like a window. So that's how you do check for mouse input in GML, Game Maker language. And that's how you do some conditionals and some other things in programming. I hope this was helpful. We're going to get into more intense stuff next time around, but I hope what I've shown you so far is helpful. Thank you so much.